Have this idea now being floated around in the alternative research community that perhaps they use sound, perhaps levitation, all of these amazing ideas as far as advanced technology. Is it fair to say that perhaps without moving into of course, the ancient aliens helping, but is it fair to say that perhaps humanity had evolved to a place where our technology was so much more advanced than where we are today?
I believe so, and that's something that most people won't accept. They may accept that an ancient culture could have had technology comparable to us, but to have one or more societies having technology beyond what we can do, I think the general public would just say that you're crazy. But we have to entertain the idea that this did exist because there's no other way to explain it.
Exactly, exactly. And to complicate this a little bit further, and the idea that we have so many pyramids around the world, and perhaps moving into uh, Latin America, or now I think recently they're saying that we have pyramids in Antarctica. To have such similar architecture and such similar megaliths, that says something that this was perhaps on a global scale that we had this type of technology or civilization.
Yeah, and we're not sure if it was one civilization or a number of civilizations that had reached this, more or less the same level of knowledge and capability. But of course, we see a lot of megalithic work in Peru and Bolivia, which is at least on par or in some ways superior to what we find in Egypt. We're thinking at about the same time.
Yes, yeah. And so, Brian, as far as your new book that you're hopefully going to be finishing up today, can you tell us a little bit about what motivated you to write this book, and perhaps give us a brief synopsis of what we are looking forward to finding in there?
Well, sure. It's because there are ruins in Peru, Bolivia, Egypt, Lebanon, and many other parts of the world that can't be explained rationally or logically in terms of the time frame or the culture that we're supposed to have made them. We have to look farther back in time, and that's always been the problem. Was it 1,000 years before they existed, or 5,000, or a million, or what? And because all of these ancient structures show significant damage, it's when I started to hear about the idea that there was a cataclysmic event around 12,000 years ago that I started to look at these megaliths from that possible timeline. And because we have access to geologists who know about the weathering of stone and how long it takes depending upon the climate, we're starting to be able to add a significant body of evidence that in fact, this event did happen. It was global, and it affected the entire planet.
And just to clarify a bit, I know we have this understanding that perhaps there was a great cataclysm that wiped out the dinosaurs. Do you feel that perhaps humanity came back, evolved, and whatnot, and then, of course, was hit by this other second or maybe even third cataclysm on our planet's timeline?
Well, actually, according to Paul Laviolette, he believes that this event happens every 13,000 years. So our poor Mother Earth is being hit by these events on a more or less regular basis, and so I think it is kind of logical looking at the evidence, seeing the damage that after an event like this, the majority of humanity would have been wiped out in the areas where this occurred. Also, we know through Robert Schoch's work that the end of the last ice age could have taken as little as 2 weeks and caused the world's oceans to rise by 300 to 350 feet. He believes in the course of 2 weeks. And so
Oh
that
my.
would have wiped out any civilization living anywhere near the ocean.
Yeah. Absolutely, and I guess we are finding more and more underwater structures as well, I guess, leading and adding to the Atlantis mythos.
That's right, and the problem is that if you in certain parts of the world, if you try to dive within 300 feet where you suspect there might be evidence, like in the Mediterranean, the government's complete, and also off the coast of India, where they found significant underwater sites, the governments just simply forbid it.
Yeah, I wonder why that is.
I wonder.
And of course that always leads me to the I guess the conspiracy researcher within me is how come they keep towing this line of this so-called archaeological history, and for me it's disinformation, and how can they benefit from just keeping us dumbed down, so to speak? But that's
Well,
neither here nor there, I guess. What are your thoughts?
Um, well, yeah, there are definitely sites in Egypt that are off limits to the public and even to researchers. There's one place I can't exactly remember. Oh, yeah, I do remember. It's called Zayet El Arian, and there have only been 3 photographs I've seen of it. Again, it looks like a set from Star Trek. Um, and it's inside of a military base, and there's no way anyone is allowed. Even archaeologists, I believe, are not allowed in there. And according to Stephen Mailer, I believe, and others, think that it is the most fascinating ancient site and could have been the center of this civilization that existed 12,000 plus years ago. But you'll be met with machine guns if you try to
Yeah.
visit that place.
My goodness. And speaking of this, we had Maria Wheatley on several months ago, and she was telling us how the military has taken over the Stonehenge area and surrounding areas, Glastonbury and whatnot, and you can't get into any of those sites anymore.
That's true, and she's found some really interesting information about that there was an elongated skull culture that lived in the Stonehenge area and may in fact have constructed it.